6:30 p.m., Chantel Kepner waves goodnight to her 18-year-old stepdaughter Anna and her 16-year-old son across the narrow cruise ship hallway, then closes her cabin door for the night. No check-ins, no texts, no second glance. 11:17 a.m. the next morning. A medical emergency is called. Anna is found asphyxiated beneath her bed, lifeless. Between those two timestamps lie exactly 17 hours that no adult in the family can fully account for. 17 hours that a courtroom transcript, a local news live shot, and a national tabloid segment all try to explain. Yet each leaves the same black hole wider than before. This is the story of that void, told only through the words people swore, broadcast, and sensationalized in the 72 hours after the gavel fell. Chantel Kepner testifies. The tragic death of 18-year-old Anna Kepner aboard a Carnival cruise has sparked an investigation that raises numerous questions about the events leading up to her death. Anna, a high school cheerleader, was found deceased under suspicious circumstances during the family vacation. The investigation into her death has focused on several aspects, particularly her 16-year-old stepbrother, who is considered the central suspect by authorities. His role in Anna's death and the events leading up to it have become a major point of contention, with differing perspectives emerging from family members and the legal proceedings. Chantel Kepner, Anna's stepmother, was called to testify in court to provide clarity on the circumstances of the cruise. In her testimony, Chantel explained the sleeping arrangements for the children, which immediately raised questions due to the unusual situation. Chantel revealed that Anna was sharing a cabin with her 16-year-old stepbrother and another family member. When questioned about who made the decision for the children to stay in the same room, Chantel stated,
We had talked it over with our travel agent, and that was what was suggested.
She emphasized that the decision was not entirely hers alone, saying, "This response highlights the role of external advice, such as the travel agent's suggestion, in shaping the family's decisions." However, while Chantel may have framed the decision as a well-considered one, the fact that 3 teenagers were placed in a single room during the cruise without more scrutiny is concerning in hindsight. Chantel further explained the relationship between the 3 children, asserting, "This statement suggests that the children had a close bond, which could imply a sense of comfort and safety among them. But given the tragic outcome, this connection is now viewed under a much darker light, as the proximity of Anna's stepbrother, who is now under investigation, takes on a more chilling significance." Anna's death occurred just days into the cruise, and the timeline of the events leading up to her death raises several red flags. Chantel testified that the last time she saw Anna was on Thursday night around 6:30 p.m. She described a typical evening, noting that Anna was heading to her room and that she did not anticipate anything unusual. Right around 6:30, Chantel said, remembering the last interaction she had with Anna. When asked about the last time she saw her 16-year-old son, Chantel testified that it was closer to 7:00 p.m., just a little bit before 7, and that he was headed back to his room as well. This indicates that both Anna and her stepbrother were last seen by their parents on Thursday evening, but what happened after that remains unclear. Chantel's statement about the children's whereabouts that night appears to lack significant details about any checks or observations made by the parents, despite the children being across the hall from Chantel and her husband. No effort seems to have been made to check on them before the following morning. "Did you ever go in and check on them?" the lawyer asked. Chantel's response was blunt. "No. I had gone to sleep." The lack of parental oversight, especially in a situation where multiple children were staying in a separate room, seems particularly troubling now that Anna is dead and her stepbrother is under suspicion. As the events unfolded, Chantel was confronted with increasingly difficult questions. When asked about her son's involvement, she responded without hesitation, stating,
"As far as you know, is the only suspect in the death of Anna your son?"
Correct.
Chantel confirmed this by saying, "Correct," thus pointing directly to the 16-year-old as the key figure in Anna's death. While no formal charges have been made, this direct acknowledgement from Chantel placed significant attention on the stepbrother as the central suspect in the case. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the family's living situation became a point of concern. Chantel revealed that, due to the ongoing investigation, her 16-year-old son would not be returning home.
As Going to be allowed to come back to your home at any point?
At this time, no.
The lawyer asked. Chantal's answer was firm, no, not with the FBI investigation. This decision reflects the family's desire to distance themselves from the 16-year-old stepbrother while the investigation continues. Even though no formal charges have been filed against him at this time, the decision to not allow the stepbrother to return to the home, despite the lack of a formal arrest, suggests significant concern about the potential role he may have played in Anna's death. Chantal's testimony, while offering some insight into the family dynamics and the events leading up to Anna's death, also raised several questions about parental supervision and the responsibilities that come with making decisions regarding the children's safety. The lack of checks on the teenagers, particularly Anna and her stepbrother, during the night of her death, has caused many to question whether more could have been done to prevent the tragedy. Chantal's claim that the decision to have the 3 children share a room was made based on the travel agent's suggestion also suggests a level of external influence in family decisions that may have inadvertently contributed to the situation. The investigation into Anna's death continues to unfold, and while Chantal's testimony has shed some light on the events of the cruise, much remains unclear. The key question that still lingers is what happened during those final hours before Anna was found dead, and whether Chantal's testimony, as well as the family's actions leading up to her death, will help uncover the full truth behind this tragic incident. As the investigation continues, the spotlight remains on Anna's stepbrother, who is now the focus of both law enforcement and public scrutiny. The case is far from resolved, and each new piece of testimony and evidence will play a crucial role in bringing clarity to a situation that has left a family in turmoil and the public searching for answers. Chantal Keptainer's testimony during the ongoing investigation into the tragic death of her stepdaughter, Anna Keptainer, has raised several important psychological and legal questions. The nuances in her words, her willingness to acknowledge certain facts, and the way she navigates key areas of the case have provided both insights into the case and potential weaknesses in her defense. Through a detailed analysis of her testimony, we can uncover the psychological implications of her statements and their potential legal consequences, particularly as they relate to the strategic objectives of the involved parties. Chantal's statement, "The 3 of them are like the 3 amigos," has both psychological and legal implications. Psychologically, this statement reflects an attempt to portray the relationship between the 3 children, Anna, the 16-year-old stepbrother, and another family member, as one that is close-knit and positive. By likening them to the 3 amigos, Chantal paints a picture of unity, friendship, and trust. This framing serves to humanize the children and possibly deflect attention away from any deeper conflicts that could be present within the family dynamics. However, in a legal context, the statement could be seen as problematic. By emphasizing the bond between the step-siblings, Chantal might inadvertently downplay the seriousness of the situation. If the 16-year-old stepbrother is indeed the primary suspect in Anna's death, this familial closeness could potentially undermine the gravity of the situation. The legal implications of such a statement are multifaceted. It may suggest a lack of appropriate oversight or awareness of potential tensions between the children, particularly in a context where one is being investigated for the death of the other. This statement, therefore, could be interpreted as an attempt to normalize the situation and shift focus away from any emerging suspicions. When Chantal Keptainer directly stated, "As far as you know, is the only suspect in the death of Anna your son?" and responded, "Correct," she may have unknowingly opened the door for immediate legal consequences. From a legal perspective, this statement is a direct acknowledgement that her 16-year-old son is the central figure in the investigation. This admission is a double-edged sword. While it might appear as a matter of transparency, it can also have immediate legal consequences for Chantal, as it suggests that she is aware of her son's potential involvement in the crime. By confirming her son as the only suspect, Chantal places herself in a difficult position legally. This statement could be viewed as an attempt to preemptively distance herself from any further responsibility or liability, but it also could be seen as an inadvertent admission that she has knowledge of the ongoing investigation and her son's role in it. In criminal law, such a statement might be interpreted as a tacit acceptance of the seriousness of the investigation. It may also provide grounds for further scrutiny into Chantel's actions, including whether she failed to intervene or take steps to address potential risks in the family dynamic leading up to Anna's death. The plaintiff's attorney, Thomas Hudson, strategically used Chantel's testimony regarding her son's ADHD medication and clonidine to suggest potential neglect in her care of the child. By focusing on the issue of missed doses, the plaintiff aimed to highlight a possible failure to manage her son's medical needs, framing it as a form of medical neglect. Hudson's line of questioning about whether the 16-year-old had missed his ADHD medication and clonidine, specifically asking about the 2 nights he failed to take his nighttime medication, was likely designed to create a perception of neglect. The question draws attention to the missed doses as a potential factor in the child's well-being, insinuating that Chantel's failure to properly manage the medications could have contributed to the tragic events. From a legal standpoint, this questioning serves to create a narrative of neglect, even though Chantel's explanation appears to downplay the importance of the missed doses. This tactic is meant to cast doubt on Chantel's responsibility and capability as a caregiver. It also attempts to introduce a new element into the case, that the child's medical needs were not adequately met, which could be used to suggest a larger pattern of neglect or mismanagement within the family. Whether this argument will hold any legal weight depends on how the court weighs the significance of missed medication in relation to the larger investigation into Anna's death. Chantel stated, confirming that the decision was not based on any behavioral issues, but instead on the overwhelming media coverage surrounding Anna's death. The fact that the school was mentioned, but never called to testify, raises several questions. Why was the school's decision to unenroll the children considered relevant enough to mention, but not pursued further in court? The absence of any testimony from the school creates a gap in the narrative, which could be seen as a deliberate omission. If the school had been allowed to testify, it might have provided additional insights into the children's behavior, their relationship with behavior, or even the pressures they were facing due to the media coverage. By not calling the school, a potentially important witness was excluded, leaving the defense without the opportunity to fully explore how external institutions were impacted by the events surrounding Anna's death. Chantal Kaptainer's testimony is riddled with contradictions, evasions, and omissions that make it difficult to assess her reliability fully. On one hand, her willingness to openly discuss certain aspects, such as her son's medication and the shared decision-making about the children's room assignments, could be seen as an attempt at transparency. However, her failure to elaborate on crucial details, such as whether she made any efforts to check on the children during the night of the incident, or whether she noticed anything unusual in her interactions with Anna or her stepbrother, raises doubts. Her direct admission regarding her son as the only suspect in Anna's death is significant, yet it also suggests a lack of awareness about the full scope of the legal ramifications of such a statement. Her defense of her actions, including the management of medications, seems to downplay the gravity of the situation, potentially undermining her credibility. Given these inconsistencies, Chantel's testimony cannot be fully trusted without further corroborating evidence. The gaps in her narrative, particularly regarding the children's interactions on the night in question, weaken her position in the case. In conclusion, while Chantal Kaptainer's testimony provides valuable insight into the events leading up to Anna's death, it is fraught with contradictions and omissions that cast doubt on her credibility. Her testimony has raised more questions than answers, particularly regarding her son's role in the tragedy and her own actions, or lack thereof, in ensuring the safety and well-being of the children during the cruise. As the investigation continues, it will be crucial to analyze the full scope of evidence to determine the truth behind Anna's tragic death. Cause of death. The ongoing investigation into the tragic death of Anna Kaptainer has sparked widespread media attention, and in particular Fox 35's coverage of the recent court proceedings has provided both critical details and subtle framing. The media's role in shaping public perception cannot be understated, especially in a case as high-profile as this one, where the facts are still unfolding. From the headlines to the courtroom dynamics, each piece of information carries its own weight. In analyzing the coverage from Fox 35, we can delve deeper into the subtle biases, the timing of events, and the new evidence that emerged during the hearing. In analyzing Fox 35's framing of the story surrounding the tragic death of Anna Keeptainer, one significant issue is the headline, which described the legal outcome as "win for the stepmom." This framing immediately introduces a sense of bias, suggesting that the court's decision favored Chantal Keeptainer. While it's important to report the facts, the language used in headlines can shape public perception. By focusing on a win for the stepmother, Fox 35 potentially skews the narrative toward portraying Chantal as the victim of a custody battle, rather than objectively reporting the ongoing investigation into Anna's death. This subtle bias can influence viewers' understanding of the case, leading them to question the fairness of the reporting. The timing of the court session, from 9:00 a.m. to 10:45 a.m., also adds an element of urgency to the proceedings. The judge's statement, "I have heard enough," came relatively early in the hearing, suggesting that the judge had already made a determination about the merits of the case. This decision to curtail the proceedings could imply that the evidence presented so far did not support the ex-husband's claims regarding the custody of the children, particularly in relation to the stepmother's role in the incident. The judge's brevity in the hearing may reflect the limited weight given to the arguments presented, signaling a potential legal strategy to prevent unnecessary prolonging of the case. Additionally, the Fox 35 report revealed new details not previously disclosed in other reports. According to Chantal's testimony, the last time she saw Anna was at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday, and the 16-year-old stepbrother was last seen around 7 p.m. These specific times add crucial information to the timeline, narrowing down the period in which the tragedy occurred. Moreover, the report introduced a conflicting statement from Chantal's mother-in-law about serving alcohol to minors. This contradiction, if true, could have significant legal implications, particularly concerning the responsibility of adults during the cruise, and whether this could be linked to the events that followed. Esther Bauer's repeated use of the phrase, "under mom's watch," in her coverage plays a crucial role in reinforcing the plaintiff's argument. By consistently emphasizing that the tragic events occurred while Chantal Keeptainer was responsible for the children, Bauer subtly places the blame on Chantal. This phrase is loaded with connotations of parental duty and accountability, which could influence public perception, aligning with the narrative that the death occurred under the direct oversight of Chantal. This strategic repetition aims to establish the responsibility of the mother figure in the tragedy, making it a focal point for the audience and subtly shifting the burden of the incident onto her shoulders. The emotional symbolism of both families wearing sunglasses as they left the courthouse also plays a significant role in shaping the public's perception of the case. Sunglasses, often associated with concealment, could suggest an attempt by the families to shield their emotions from public view, thereby controlling how their reactions are perceived. In the context of a high-profile case like this, the use of sunglasses could be seen as a form of media management, a deliberate strategy to protect their privacy and avoid further scrutiny. This visual cue also conveys a sense of detachment or an unwillingness to engage emotionally with the media, which might be interpreted as a defensive tactic. Additionally, the decision by Temple Christian School to proactively unenroll the children speaks to the immense pressure exerted by media coverage. The school's decision, citing overwhelming media attention rather than behavioral issues, highlights the significant influence of public scrutiny on institutional decisions. This move suggests that the school felt compelled to act not only in the best interest of the students, but also in response to the negative publicity surrounding the case. The pressure from the media, in this instance, may have been so intense that the school felt it had no other option but to remove the children, signaling the extent to which media attention can shape and influence institutional actions, especially in cases of public tragedy. The fact that Christopher Keeptainer, Anna's biological father, was present at the court hearing but was not called to testify raises important questions about legal strategy. By keeping Christopher off the stand, the defense may have sought to avoid any potentially damaging testimony or statements that could be used against Chantal. Legal teams often weigh the risks of having certain individuals testify, particularly in high-profile cases where emotions run high and any statement could be scrutinized. Christopher's absence from the witness stand could indicate that his testimony was deemed unnecessary or strategically avoided, perhaps because it might not have supported the defense's narrative or might have introduced contradictions. Fox 35's repeated emphasis on the fact that no one's been arrested, no one's been charged, serves to create a sense of delay in justice, subtly conveying frustration and impatience. By highlighting this fact in the context of an ongoing investigation, the news outlet seems to underscore the idea that justice is being delayed or is not being served swiftly. This framing could lead the audience to question the efficiency of the legal process, suggesting that the authorities are slow to act, even as the public continues to await answers. This repetition works to maintain a sense of unresolved tension, implying that the case is stagnating and that further action is needed. When evaluating the objectivity of Fox 35's report, there are several points where the coverage either exaggerates or omits critical details. The consistent use of language that places blame or hints at inaction, such as under mom's watch, or focusing on delays in arrests, suggests a narrative that leans toward portraying a slow and potentially flawed justice process. The exclusion of Christopher from the testimony and the omission of certain institutional perspectives, like those from the school or other witnesses, further complicate the story. While the report offers some factual insights, its tone and selection of details could lead to a skewed interpretation of the case, ultimately affecting its objectivity. Level of confidence. Inside Edition's opening phrase, high school cheerleader, and slaying, is a strategic use of language designed to maximize emotional impact. By framing the victim as a high school cheerleader, the report immediately evokes a sense of youth, innocence, and tragedy, which draws in the audience's emotional sympathies. The term, slaying, further intensifies the drama, suggesting a brutal and violent crime. This choice of words is meant to create a vivid and sensational image in the audience's mind, setting the tone for the rest of the coverage. While this approach is effective in capturing attention, it also raises questions about whether such dramatic language distorts the severity of the facts, potentially influencing the public perception of the case. In terms of narrative construction, Inside Edition selectively quotes only 4 to 5 brief statements from the court proceedings, focusing on dramatic moments, rather than providing a comprehensive view of the testimony. This selective quoting is often employed in media to create a sense of tension or to emphasize key points that resonate with the audience. While this technique serves to heighten the drama and keep viewers engaged, it also leaves out crucial context that could change how these statements are interpreted. The omission of the broader context behind these quotes can lead to a skewed or incomplete understanding of the case, reinforcing certain narratives over others. A new detail introduced by Inside Edition that was not present in earlier reports is the claim that the 16-year-old suspect told grandparents he doesn't remember what happened the night of Anna's death. This piece of information is notable, as it is presented as a direct quote from the suspect. However, its reliability and source remain unclear. Without direct confirmation from law enforcement or legal authorities, it is difficult to assess the truthfulness and significance of this statement. The report does not clarify whether this information was relayed through a third party or if the grandparents' account is verifiable, which raises concerns about the credibility of this detail and its potential influence on the investigation. As such, while this statement may add to the narrative, its authenticity and weight should be treated with caution. Inside Edition's choice of the phrase, found asphyxiated under her bed, to describe Anna Kiptainer's death is a striking example of how media can manipulate language to evoke a strong emotional response. By using asphyxiated, the report emphasizes the violent and unnatural nature of the death, which is likely to stir shock and disgust in the audience. In contrast, other sources have been more measured, stating that Anna was found in the cabin, which presents the discovery in a less graphic manner. The use of more dramatic language in Inside Edition not only serves to heighten the emotional impact, but also potentially shifts the narrative toward a more sensationalized portrayal of the incident, focusing on the brutality rather than the broader circumstances surrounding Anna's death. The excerpt from the 18-year-old brother's testimony, "Did she allow you to drink alcohol?" "Yeah," is another example of selective editing that shapes the narrative. This statement is presented in a way that makes it seem as though the brother is openly admitting to underage drinking, which could be seen as crucial to the case. However, the context in which this admission was made is not fully provided, leaving the audience to speculate about the circumstances surrounding the conversation. Was this exchange part of a larger line of questioning? Or was it taken out of context to make the admission appear more damning than it truly is? Without the full context, the impact of this statement may be exaggerated, serving as a tool to push a particular narrative rather than offering an accurate reflection of the facts. The phrase, "crush of reporters and photographers," is another instance where Inside Edition potentially inflates the situation to heighten the drama of the case. While it's true that the case has garnered significant media attention, the phrase, "crush of reporters and photographers," may be more of a dramatic embellishment than a literal description. Such language is often in the media to convey the intensity and scale of public interest, with the goal of increasing ratings. The image of a chaotic scene filled with reporters and photographers adds to the sensationalism, making the case feel larger than life and drawing in viewers who are interested in the spectacle rather than the details of the investigation. However, whether this depiction reflects the actual level of media presence or is exaggerated for effect remains unclear. Inside Edition's editorial strategy noticeably avoids discussing the actual court ruling, where Chantal Keeptainer prevailed, choosing instead to focus on the dramatic aspects of the case. By omitting the outcome of the trial and instead emphasizing the sensational details, such as the familial dynamics and the emotional tension in the courtroom, the program directs the audience's attention to the most emotionally charged elements of the case. This choice underscores Inside Edition's focus on drama rather than factual reporting. By emphasizing conflict and sensational moments, the program caters to an audience that is more interested in intrigue and spectacle than in the resolution of the legal matter, ultimately shaping public perception through selective storytelling. This strategy increases viewer engagement but sacrifices journalistic objectivity in favor of sensationalism. Comparing the tone between Inside Edition and Fox 35 reveals a clear difference in editorial approach. Inside Edition adopts a more tabloid-style, sensational tone, focusing on high-stakes drama, emotional appeals, and provocative language such as slaying and asphyxiated under her bed. This approach is designed to grab attention and evoke a strong emotional reaction from viewers. In contrast, Fox 35, as a local news outlet, maintains a more straightforward and balanced tone, focusing on the legal process and factual developments without leaning too heavily into dramatic language. The more restrained tone of Fox 35 highlights its role in providing local, fact-based news, while Inside Edition's tone aligns with its strategy of emphasizing shock value and drama to captivate its audience. Inside Edition's emotional manipulation is evident in how it crafts the narrative to stir public sentiment. By framing the case through charged language and focusing on the most sensational aspects of the story, the program plays into viewers' emotional responses, urging them to form opinions based on the drama rather than the full context. This strategy not only boosts ratings, but also shapes public opinion, pushing viewers to feel strongly about the case, whether through anger, sympathy, or outrage. By focusing on these emotional triggers, Inside Edition successfully captures its audience's attention, but at the expense of a more nuanced, objective understanding of the legal process. The emotional manipulation inherent in this strategy can have a lasting impact on public opinion, potentially influencing how people view the parties involved and the overall case. Compare with each other. The coverage of the tragic death of Anna Keeptainer through various media sources reveals how the story has evolved across platforms, from neutral legal reporting to sensationalized national coverage. To fully understand how the narrative has shifted, it's helpful to compare the core details of the case across three key sources: the court proceedings, local reporting by Fox 35, and national coverage by Inside Edition. A table of the key facts from each source highlights the variations in how they report critical elements of the case. These elements include the last time Anna and the 16-year-old stepbrother were seen, the sleeping arrangements, alcohol consumption, medication management, and more. For instance, last time seen, the court documents and Fox 35 report Anna was last seen at 6:30 p.m., while the stepbrother was seen at 7:00 p.m. However, Inside Edition did not specifically emphasize these times, instead focusing on the broader emotional implications. Sleeping arrangements. Both Fox 35 and Inside Edition mentioned that Anna shared a room with her stepbrother and another family member, with Chantal asserting that this decision was mutual. The court transcript confirms these details without adding additional drama, presenting the factual layout of the family's accommodations. Alcohol consumption. Inside Edition notably emphasizes the accusation that minors were served alcohol, while the court transcript contains a more neutral account, where Chantel denied that the children were drinking. Fox 35 also touches on the topic, but the details are less dramatic. Medication. Chantel's testimony about her son's missed doses of clonidine and ADHD medication is consistently mentioned in all three sources, with slight variations in emphasis. Inside Edition, however, highlights this detail to suggest neglect, while the court and Fox 35 offer it as part of the factual background. By comparing the details across these sources, we can see how the same core facts are treated differently depending on the platform and the intended audience. Certain pieces of information appear in only one source, and their inclusion likely reflects the editorial slant or the strategic goals of that outlet. For example, Inside Edition's report that the 16-year-old suspect told grandparents he doesn't remember is not mentioned in either the court documents or Fox 35's coverage. This detail, if true, could be a critical part of the investigation, but it is presented without clear verification from authorities, raising questions about its reliability. The reason this detail is only found in Inside Edition could be that the network is attempting to inject more drama and mystery into the case, framing the suspect's amnesia as an emotionally charged element that adds intrigue for viewers. Additionally, Inside Edition's emphasis on the phrase, slaying, to describe Anna's death is absent in both the court documents and Fox 35's coverage. This choice is designed to increase emotional engagement, using sensational language that drives home the brutality of the crime, a tactic commonly used in tabloid-style reporting. The evolution of the story through different media sources illustrates how public narratives can shift depending on the platform's tone and target audience. In the court proceedings, the facts are presented in a neutral, formal manner, focusing on the testimony and legal aspects of the case. The court's focus is on the timeline of events and the facts surrounding the death of Anna, with no sensationalism or emotional manipulation. Fox 35, a local news outlet, provides more context, offering interviews and insights from Chantel and others close to the case. While still relatively balanced, the station's report carries a more narrative-driven approach, using the emotional weight of the family dynamics and legal implications to frame the story for a local audience. Fox 35 does not rely on shock value, but rather provides a straightforward account of the developments, including the custody battle and the uncertainties surrounding the investigation. In stark contrast, Inside Edition, as a national tabloid news outlet, shifts the focus almost entirely to emotional drama. The story's evolution from the court's neutral facts to Fox 35's more humanized portrayals in Inside Edition's sensationalized narrative, where terms like slaying and detailed emotional moments from Chantel's testimony are used to create intrigue. This strategy is designed to capture the attention of a wider audience by emphasizing the more shocking and emotionally charged aspects of the case, rather than the legal facts. The progression of this story across the three sources highlights the role media plays in shaping public opinion. While the court and Fox 35 aim to provide balanced, fact-driven accounts, Inside Edition's editorial strategy prioritizes dramatic and emotional storytelling. This shift in focus reflects the broader media landscape's tendency to evolve stories from fact-based reporting to narrative-driven content that appeals to the emotions and curiosity of viewers. In doing so, the media contributes to a complex and often skewed public understanding of the case. The case of Anna Keptaner's death has sparked significant media coverage, and through various outlets, we can see both the challenges of accurate reporting and the impact of such discrepancies on the public's understanding of the case. Three key areas where confusion or misrepresentation has occurred are the accuracy of names, the age of the suspect, and the conflicting details of Anna's discovery. Each of these elements plays a role in shaping how the story is perceived and affects how individuals search for information, process the details, and form opinions. The consistent variation in the spelling of Chantel Keptaner's name, Chantel, and Chantal, across different media outlets can create challenges in terms of accuracy and searchability. In an era where information is frequently accessed online, spelling inconsistencies can affect how easily information can be found, complicating searches for individuals or media consumers looking for more details on the case. This confusion in spelling may stem from the phonetic similarities between the names, but the impact is significant, as it can lead to misdirected searches and difficulty in tracking accurate information across news reports, social media, or legal documents. Moreover, Keeptainer is a relatively uncommon surname, which may not appear consistently across databases or search engines, contributing further to potential confusion. The choice of how a name is spelled in reporting can affect how well the information reaches the public, highlighting the need for accuracy and consistency when covering high-profile cases. Another point of confusion is the age of the suspect in Anna Keeptainer's death. In various reports, there has been conflicting information about whether the suspect was 14 or 16 years old. This inconsistency has persisted across multiple outlets, and it is essential to clarify the suspect's age for the sake of accurate reporting. The misreporting of the suspect's age could stem from miscommunication, unclear official statements, or simple human error, but it has the potential to affect the way the public perceives the case. The age of the suspect is a critical detail, as it may influence discussions about legal responsibility, the nature of the crime, and the level of accountability expected from a minor. For example, a 16-year-old may be treated differently under the law than a 14-year-old, affecting both the prosecution's strategy and the defense's arguments. Thus, resolving the issue of the suspect's true age is crucial for public clarity and legal accuracy, as the misrepresentation of this fact could lead to widespread confusion or skewed perceptions of the case. Perhaps one of the most striking discrepancies in the reporting of Anna's death is the detail about her being found asphyxiated under her bed, a claim that only appeared in Inside Edition's coverage. This specific wording differs significantly from the more general descriptions used in other reports, such as stating that Anna was found in the cabin. The phrasing, "under her bed," adds a layer of drama and shock value, which may be intended to evoke a more visceral emotional response from the audience. However, the inclusion of this detail in only one outlet raises questions about its accuracy. Was this a detail confirmed by law enforcement or medical examiners? Or was it a speculative element added to heighten the story's emotional impact? The absence of this detail in other credible reports, such as those from Fox 35 or court transcripts, suggests that it might not be a verified fact, but rather an embellishment used to sensationalize the case for a larger audience. The line between rumor and fact is often blurred in sensational news reporting, and without further confirmation from official sources, the under the bed claim should be treated with caution. The introduction of such a dramatic detail in Inside Edition's coverage underscores the program's strategy of prioritizing emotional engagement over factual precision. By framing the death in such a graphic way, the outlet caters to an audience that seeks not just information but also emotional stimulation. However, this raises ethical concerns about the potential for misrepresentation and the spreading of unverified information. In investigative reporting, especially in sensitive cases like this, the line between fact and dramatization should remain clear to avoid creating a narrative that may lead the public astray. In conclusion, the discrepancies in the reporting of key details, such as the suspect's age, the accuracy of names, and sensationalized descriptions of the crime scene, have significant implications for the public's understanding of the case. While the goal of the media is to inform, these inconsistencies and embellishments can skew perceptions, influence emotional reactions, and complicate the search for truth. As the case continues to unfold, it is essential that media outlets prioritize accuracy over sensationalism, ensuring that the information they provide is reliable and objective. The role of the media in shaping public opinion is powerful, and it is critical that journalists adhere to the highest standards of reporting to avoid perpetuating confusion or spreading misinformation. Only through accurate, fact-based coverage can the public gain a true understanding of the case and its complex, sensitive nature. Psychological analysis. In the ongoing legal battle surrounding the tragic death of Anna Keeptainer, the strategies employed by the key individuals, Chantel Keeptainer, Thomas Hudson, and Christopher Kepner, have been critical in shaping the narrative and influencing public perception. Their actions, whether through testimony or silence, reflect their legal strategies and how they navigate the emotional and legal complexities of this high-profile case. Chantel Keeptainer's testimony has been characterized by her consistent use of phrases that aim to minimize her responsibility and shift the focus away from her actions. For example, her mention of the travel agent suggested is a subtle yet strategic move to distance herself from the decision to have the 3 children share a room during the cruise. By attributing the decision to an external party, she attempts to deflect blame and present herself as someone merely following the guidance of a professional. This phrase suggests that the decision was not entirely within her control, downplaying her role in the arrangement. Furthermore, the use of mutual when describing her decision-making with her husband is another technique to minimize personal responsibility. The word mutual implies shared decision-making, which could be viewed as a collective choice rather than an individual one. This framing helps Chantal avoid direct accountability, suggesting that any failure or oversight in the children's supervision was not solely hers, but rather a joint responsibility with her husband. Additionally, when Chantal refers to the children as best friends, she emphasizes the harmonious relationship between them, which might be an attempt to portray the situation as normal and without conflict. This portrayal could serve to reduce the emotional weight of the situation, presenting the children as close-knit and safe, rather than highlighting any underlying tensions or concerns that may have existed in their interactions. These strategies allow Chantal to avoid direct blame and instead shift the focus toward external factors or shared responsibility, possibly to protect herself legally in the case. Thomas Hudson's decision to use his 18-year-old son as a witness against his mother, Chantal, is a bold and potentially risky strategy. By having his son testify, Hudson is aiming to strengthen his case in the custody battle, which is intrinsically tied to the tragic death of Anna. The son's testimony, particularly if it includes insights into his mother's actions, could provide vital information that supports Hudson's claims of neglect or mismanagement during the cruise. This could add weight to the argument that Chantal was not adequately overseeing the children, which is a critical point in the ongoing legal battle. However, this strategy is fraught with risks. First, having a family member testify against a parent can lead to emotional and psychological consequences, not just for the individuals involved, but for the family unit as a whole. The son may face significant pressure or distress, knowing his testimony could have lasting implications on his relationship with his mother. Additionally, using a family member as a witness could backfire if the son's testimony lacks credibility or comes across as biased, especially if it appears that he is being used as a pawn in a larger legal strategy. Moreover, there is a risk that this approach could further polarize the family, leading to more public scrutiny and making the case even more emotionally charged. In legal terms, Thomas Hudson's strategy hinges on convincing the court that Chantal was responsible for the children's safety and that her actions or inactions contributed to Anna's tragic death. However, this approach is delicate as it requires the son's testimony to be perceived as reliable and compelling without alienating the jury or the judge. The emotional fallout from such a strategy could potentially undermine Hudson's long-term objectives if not executed carefully. Christopher Kepner's absolute silence during the proceedings, coupled with his act of holding hands with his wife, Chantal, as they left the courtroom, sends a powerful message to the public and the media. His silence may be a strategic move to avoid becoming embroiled in the media frenzy surrounding the case. By not speaking or engaging with the press, Kepner keeps the focus on the legal process and avoids adding fuel to the fire of public speculation. His decision not to testify or offer statements may reflect a desire to protect his family from further scrutiny and to maintain a semblance of privacy in a case that has already drawn significant attention. On the other hand, his physical display of support for Chantal, holding hands as they exited the courtroom, could be seen as a calculated gesture to publicly align himself with her. This nonverbal communication sends a message that he stands by her side, despite the legal and emotional challenges they are facing. In a high-profile case, such actions can be interpreted as a way to show unity and solidarity, not just within the family but also in the eyes of the public. For the media and the public, this gesture can be seen as an indication that Christopher supports his wife through the ordeal, adding a layer of emotional appeal to the case. Christopher's silence, however, also raises questions. By choosing not to speak publicly or testify, he avoids adding any complexity to the case that could affect the family dynamics. His choice not to engage with the media, while protecting his privacy, could also suggest that he is strategically distancing himself from the potential fallout of the legal proceedings. This silence could be interpreted in various ways by the public, either as a protective measure or as an avoidance tactic to steer clear of the emotional weight of the case. Regardless, his public dissupport for Chantal, through their physical gesture, ensures that he remains connected to her during the highly charged proceedings, sending a message of family cohesion amidst the crisis. The strategies employed by Chantal Keeptainer, Thomas Hudson, and Christopher Kepner, with the complex interplay between legal tactics, emotional appeal, and public perception. Chantal's use of diminishing responsibility phrases, Thomas Hudson's decision to use his son as a witness, and Christopher Kepner's strategic silence and display of support all contribute to the evolving narrative of the case. Each individual's approach highlights the delicate balance between personal emotions, legal maneuvering, and public relations in a high-profile trial. These actions, whether intentional or not, shape how the case is viewed by the public and can influence the long-term outcome of the legal proceedings. The unfolding case of Anna Kiptainer's death has become a complex web of legal strategies, media influence, and public perception. From the actions of the 16-year-old suspect's family to the role of Temple Christian School and the FBI's prolonged silence, each of these factors plays a crucial role in how the case is being navigated and reported. As various entities involve themselves in this high-profile case, the intersection of legal defense, institutional behavior, and media reporting becomes increasingly significant in shaping the direction of the investigation and the public's understanding of the events. A particularly interesting detail in the case is the claim that the 16-year-old suspect allegedly told his grandparents, "I don't remember what happened the night of Anna's death." This statement, if accurately reported, may indicate an attempt to prepare a legal defense of lack of intent, or even blackout, during the incident. In legal terms, a defense based on a lack of intent could argue that the suspect did not have the mental state necessary to commit the crime. Alternatively, the claim of a blackout suggests that the suspect may have been unaware of his actions due to a loss of memory, often associated with extreme stress or substance use. The family's decision to convey this statement could be a strategic move to establish a defense narrative, positioning the suspect as someone who may have acted impulsively or without clear memory of the event. This could potentially soften the severity of the charges, especially in a case involving a minor. If this defense strategy is pursued, it may impact how the case is presented in court, particularly regarding the suspect's mental state and intent at the time of Anna's death. The family's role in fostering this narrative, however, also raises questions about the potential influence they may have on the suspect's recollection and whether this statement truly reflects the events as they occurred or is an attempt to shape the defense. The decision by Temple Christian School to unenroll all the children involved in the case highlights the tension between protecting the institution's reputation and the pressures of public scrutiny. The school's decision to remove the children, including Anna's siblings, from enrollment reportedly stemmed from the overwhelming media attention surrounding the case, rather than any issues related to their behavior. This action suggests a desire to protect the school's image, especially in a situation that could reflect poorly on the institution, particularly when it involves a tragic event within a religious or educational community. By unenrolling the children, Temple Christian School may have hoped to shield itself from further negative attention and to distance itself from the controversy. The school's leadership likely feared that continuing to have the children enrolled, while the case was ongoing, could invite additional media exposure, which could damage the institution's reputation. This decision to prioritize the image of the school over the well-being of the students involved raises ethical concerns, as it may reflect a broader issue of institutional self-preservation in the face of public scandal. While the school may argue that its actions were necessary to protect the children's privacy and emotional well-being, the decision also reinforces the influence that media coverage and public opinion can have on educational institutions. The FBI's decision to maintain a no-comment stance for nearly a month after Anna's death is a common practice in ongoing investigations, particularly in high-profile cases. From a legal standpoint, this strategy is necessary to protect the integrity of the investigation and ensure that no information is leaked that could compromise the case or influence witnesses and potential jurors. Investigators must be cautious about what they share with the public, as releasing too much information too early can lead to misinterpretations or could inadvertently help the defense formulate its strategy. The no comment approach also serves as a way to prevent the case from being influenced by media coverage. In high-profile cases, the public's perception can be swayed by early leaks or statements, which may result in undue pressure on law enforcement and the courts. By withholding information, the FBI ensures that the investigation remains impartial and unaffected by external factors. However, this approach also contributes to public frustration, as the lack of updates fuels speculation and the spread of rumors, especially when the case is being heavily scrutinized by the media. The contrast between local news outlets like Fox 35 and national tabloid-style programs like Inside Edition underscores the covering a high-profile case. Fox 35, as a local news outlet, maintains a more balanced and fact-driven narrative, focusing on the legal aspects of the case and providing updates without sensationalizing the details. The station's coverage is rooted in the community, offering a more grounded perspective on the case, while also reporting on the legal proceedings and the family dynamics. In contrast, Inside Edition, with its national reach and emphasis on sensationalism, frames the case as a dramatic story designed to provoke strong emotional responses. Inside Edition's coverage highlights the most shocking elements, using graphic language like slaying and focusing on emotionally charged moments to draw in a broader audience. This strategy is designed to maximize viewership by creating a sense of suspense and intrigue, even at the cost of diminishing the factual context. Ultimately, while local outlets like Fox 35 focus on delivering straightforward reporting, national outlets like Inside Edition steer the conversation toward drama, influencing public sentiment and perception. The differing approaches reveal the balance between providing objective information and catering to the emotional needs of the audience. As the case continues to develop, the role of the media in shaping the narrative will remain critical, as the public's understanding of the case is heavily influenced by how it is reported, interpreted, and sensationalized by different outlets. What's next? Based entirely on the information provided in the 3 transcripts, it is highly likely that the FBI will charge the 16-year-old suspect at the state level rather than the federal level. The primary reason for this is the nature of the crime, which seems to fall squarely under the jurisdiction of state law, as the incident occurred on a cruise ship within U.S. waters. While the FBI's involvement in the investigation is clear, particularly in the early stages, where they might gather evidence and assess the overall situation, the case seems more appropriate for local or state prosecutors. Crimes involving minors, especially when the potential suspect is under 18, are generally handled by state courts, which have the specific legal framework for juvenile justice. Given that the suspect is still a minor, it would be surprising if federal authorities took the case. Federal charges typically apply in cases involving interstate crimes, large-scale trafficking, or crimes on international waters under maritime law, and unless new evidence surfaces to suggest a federal offense, it appears the charges will remain at the state level. Additionally, since the local police and the state's legal system have already been involved, it would not be common for federal authorities to assume primary control unless new, broader violations are identified. Based on the available details in the transcripts, it is plausible that the 16-year-old suspect could be tried as an adult, depending on the findings of the investigation and how the case progresses. In many jurisdictions, when a minor is accused of a serious crime, such as homicide or manslaughter, there is a possibility that the court could transfer the case to adult court if it is deemed appropriate. This would depend on several factors, including the nature of the crime, the suspect's maturity, and the overall circumstances of the incident. The question of whether the suspect is tried as an adult or as a juvenile is often determined by the severity of the crime, as well as the age of the defendant. Since the suspect is 16 years old, it is within the range where states typically have the discretion to transfer the case to adult court. The decision would likely also depend whether there was premeditation, or if the crime was committed under aggravated circumstances, which could push for adult charges. However, this remains speculative at this point, and much will depend on the legal strategies of both the prosecution and the defense, including the testimony regarding the suspect's mental state and capacity to understand the consequences of his actions. In any case, if the defense is able to prove that the 16-year-old was acting under duress or did not understand the full weight of his actions, the juvenile system may remain in play. But if the prosecution can argue that the suspect had full intent or understood the gravity of the situation, trying him as an adult would be a strong possibility. The phrase, "I don't remember," reportedly said by the 16-year-old suspect, is a crucial piece of testimony that could form the basis for a defense strategy such as diminished capacity or voluntary intoxication. Diminished capacity refers to a mental state where the defendant may not have been able to form the specific intent to commit a crime, often due to mental illness or impairment at the time. If the defense opts to pursue this route, they could argue that the suspect's memory loss and potential disorientation from either stress, psychological trauma, or substance use, if applicable, impacted his ability to fully comprehend his actions. If the "I don't remember" statement is taken to mean that the suspect had a blackout or was unable to form clear recollections of the night's events, this could support a defense of voluntary intoxication. Voluntary intoxication, in many jurisdictions, can be used to mitigate charges if it be shown that the defendant was intoxicated to the point of losing the ability to understand the criminality of their actions. This defense often focuses on alcohol or drug use that impairs decision-making and reasoning abilities. However, this defense is complicated and usually difficult to prove. In the case of the 16-year-old suspect, the lack of direct evidence of intoxication could weaken the defense unless more details emerge about his potential substance use. The success of these defenses would depend heavily on the psychological evaluations of the suspect and expert testimony regarding his mental state at the time of the crime. If the defense is able to convince the court that the suspect was acting under diminished capacity or due to the effects of intoxication, it could potentially result in a lesser charge, such as manslaughter, rather than murder. However, these defenses carry significant risks, as they can be seen as attempts to avoid full accountability for the crime. As the legal proceedings continue and media coverage intensifies, it is highly likely that both sides will soon hire public relations, PR firms to shape the narrative and manage their respective public images. Given the high-profile nature of the case, with both the death of Anna Keeptainer and the legal struggles of her family, it is almost certain that a PR battle will emerge, especially as the case progresses toward trial. The side most likely to hire a PR firm first will likely be the defense, particularly Chantal Keeptainer's camp. In high-profile case, public's perception of the defendant can directly influence the trial's outcome. It is critical for the defense to manage the narrative. The defense team will likely work to portray Chantal in a sympathetic light, using a PR firm to help diffuse the emotional weight of the accusations and present her as a mother dealing with tragic circumstances. The PR firm will likely focus on framing Chantal's actions in a way that minimizes her responsibility and emphasizes the familial dynamics that led to the tragedy. This could involve media interviews, targeted social media campaigns, and statements from family members or experts that support Chantal's narrative. On the other hand, the prosecution may also hire a PR firm, but they will likely do so once the case enters its trial phase. The prosecution will need to manage public opinion in favor of holding the defendant accountable, particularly as the case becomes more emotionally charged. Their PR strategy will likely focus on the severity of the crime, the impact on the family, and the need for justice for Anna. The prosecution will work to present the case in a way that paints the 16-year-old suspect as a dangerous individual who must be held responsible for the loss of life. In either case, the media war will be crucial in shaping public opinion, potentially influencing jurors and casting the legal proceedings in a particular light. The hire of a PR firm will not only reflect the strategic choices of both sides, but also underscore the importance of narrative control in the age of media saturation. As the case of Anna Keeptainer continues to unfold, legal and media strategies will play an increasingly important role in shaping the outcome. Whether through decisions about charges, the handling of the 16-year-old suspect, or the PR efforts from both sides, each move will have lasting consequences on the public's perception of the case and its resolution. As the battle moves forward, the interplay between legal decisions and media portrayal will remain critical in determining both the immediate outcome of the trial and its longer-term impact on the families involved. As of December 6, 2025, the control of the narrative surrounding Anna Keeptainer's death appears to lie primarily with the media, which continues to shape public perception through dramatic and selective reporting. Outlets like Inside Edition have framed the case in a sensationalized manner, using emotionally charged language such as slaying and asphyxiated under her bed. These phrases evoke a strong emotional response from the audience, directing attention to the brutality of the crime rather than the legal complexities involved. This style of reporting serves to heighten the drama and intrigue, pushing the case into the realm of entertainment, often at the expense of nuance and factual accuracy. In contrast, local outlets like Fox 35 offer a more restrained, fact-based approach. They focus on the legal proceedings and the details of the case as they unfold, reporting on the custody battle and the ongoing investigation without resorting to the emotional dramatization seen in national coverage. While this provides a clearer view of the legal process, it risks being overshadowed by the national media's more engaging and provocative coverage. The legal teams on both sides are undoubtedly aware of the media's influence. Chantal Kaptiner's defense is likely working to counter the sensationalized portrayal of her actions by controlling how they are presented in the press, framing her as a mother dealing with tragedy rather than a negligent caregiver. On the other hand, the prosecution is using the media to build a case that highlights the gravity of Anna's death and the role Chantal and others may have played. In the current phase of the case, the media is playing a crucial role in shaping how the public perceives the ongoing investigation and legal proceedings. While the court will ultimately determine the outcome of the case, the emotional tone set by the media is influencing the broader narrative. Public opinion, fueled by these reports, will likely continue to evolve as new information and developments are released, making the media the true driver of the story at this point.